Kirk Cousins coming back to the Washington Commanders. Do you like that? Welcome back to another video here on the Washington Football Maniacs channel. My name is Greg, and this channel is dedicated to the Washington Commanders, soon to be one of the best franchises in the NFL. If you're down with that, please make sure you have subscribed to this channel. When you do, also make sure you hit that notification bell so you will not miss any other video releases. So, Kirk Cousins back to Washington. How much of a reality could that possibly be? Kirk Cousins, of course, he is a free agent, and there's been talk that he is open to possibly signing on with another team. He was really open to playing for Bill Belichick again. And right now, we still don't know if Bill Belichick is actually going to get hired as a head coach. It seemed like all fingers were pointing toward the Atlanta Falcons, and we were seeing scenarios to where possibly if Bill Belichick is the next Atlanta Falcons head coach, that Kirk Cousins would be interested in heading to Atlanta to play for Bill Belichick. Well, right now we got Mike Vrabel. Wow. English language, I tell you, man. Vrabel is, he's finishing up a second interview with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, we have also interviewed a couple of, actually probably more than a couple, but several head coaching candidates a second time. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be finalists or even, remotely considered for the job. Just that, some of these guys, it was virtual interviews. They need to make sure that they do in-house interviews, not in-house, but in-person interviews with some of these guys. So that could be all it is with Mike in Atlanta, but Vrabel would be a very good head coach. I know things kind of started going a little downhill in Tennessee, but I think sometimes it's just kind of a fresh new start is what some of these coaches need in another area. I mean, you look at Andy Reid. Now, Andy Reid was fairly successful in Philadelphia, but, toward the end, I think he got to where it's like, things are mediocre. I remember them having a lot of seasons where they're lucky if they got to 8-8. I think I remember one year they got to the playoffs at maybe like 8-7-1, something like that. Maybe it was a little bit better of a record, but it definitely wasn't a double-digit type of season. So the point I'm trying to make is that sometimes really good coaches kind of start to wear out their welcome in certain cities. They just need a brand new start, and that might be what's needed for MV there out of Tennessee and maybe going to Atlanta. So if that's the case, brings us back to the point of this video, Kirk Cousins. Would he still consider going to Atlanta even though Bill Belichick would not be coaching in Atlanta? Would he be considered going back to Washington? Now, of course, the news media, like they do anything else, anytime that there is a big name player who is in free agency, who's seeking to sign with another team, it seems like the Commanders are almost always mentioned as a player, because they're still holding on to this idea of how Dan Snyder did things back in the early 2000s. And even though Dan Snyder's not in Washington anymore, they're still holding out that. Certainly, that's, the Commander's always going to be in the market for some of these big-name guys. But, Kirk Cousins, if you look at it, he, except for this season, this was the first injury he's had, but he's been relatively healthy all of his career. He has been a solid quarterback. He's been at least a top 10 quarterback in the league. And now I know a lot of people are going to say, no, he's still nothing but a stat patter. I'm like, well, have you been keeping up with Kirk Cousins? Have you been watching all the Minnesota Vikings games since he's left Washington? Maybe that's true. I don't know. Ask Vikings fans what, their thoughts on Kirk Cousins. And maybe it's divided. Maybe a lot of them feel that he's been an okay quarterback. I get the sense that Kirk Cousins has been pretty good for them, despite the fact that obviously he was not, a few years ago, the reason why that Minnesota signed Kirk Cousins was they felt like he was the final missing piece for a Super Bowl push. And then after that, it was like, well, look at the Vikings. They're barely winning 10 games, and then they're not making the playoffs, or they make the playoffs or one and done or something like that. And then, of course, us Washington fans who are always bitter about anything, we're happy because it looks like, well, Kirk Cousins just doing the same thing in Minnesota. But honestly, when you have a chance to really watch how he played in Minnesota, he's played really well. He has. He's been to multiple Pro Bowls. I mean, he is a solid quarterback. So, I posted this question in the community section, as far as like, would you take Kirk Cousins back? Would you be open to that? A lot of people are like, no, there's no way I want Kirk Cousins back. And some people have it in their heads that, well, if you bring back Kirk Cousins, we're not drafting a quarterback. I'm like, why? Why does it have to be one or the other? It doesn't have to be one or the other. You can have Kirk Cousins on your team. You can even have him starting for a year or two, and you can still draft that quarterback this year for the future. You don't have to start that quarterback right away. And honestly, it may work out to your advantage not to start that quarterback right away, because if you're not going to be able to address all of the needs on the offensive line in one off season, and not get all of the weapons he needs or whatnot, I mean, you may not necessarily want to start a guy his rookie season, throw him into the fire and say, see how far you can take us, because that can really break any quarterback, rookie guy coming into the league. And so sometimes it really helps to have a good, savvy veteran quarterback, which we have with Brissett. Now, Jacoby Brissett would probably be pretty good, but he is not really a starter. Kirk Cousins is a starter in the league. He's a top 10 quarterback. So if you bring Kirk Cousins in, you're automatically going to have an opportunity to be a playoff caliber type of team. Now, yeah, you may not win the Super Bowl with them, and who knows, maybe you will, but at least you're going to be a good team. You're going to be a team that is going to be able to develop any young quarterback behind him while you're rebuilding offensive lines, defensive lines, filling out the rest of the defense, getting those tight ends that are desperately needed. That's probably going to be used big time in a Ben Johnson type of offense. Excuse me. I think you also have to look at the type of offense that Ben Johnson is going to bring in, and would somebody like Kirk Cousins come in right away and look really good in that type of offense. So I don't think it's so far-fetched. Now, other podcasters will probably disagree with me, and it's all opinions. At the end of the day, it's all opinions. I would welcome Kirk Cousins back with open arms, because I don't think we should have let him go in the first place. He was one of the most consistent quarterbacks that we have had in a long time, and he played really well for us. He really did. And I think he always had us in a chance to win every single game. Stat patter or not, Kirk Cousins, he can sling it, and he can command an offense. And so I think you do consider, especially if he says that at this point in his career he's made enough money. It's not about the money. Maybe he does want to go somewhere where he feels like the culture is being rebuilt. There's a bright offensive mind that's going to run everything. There's great ownership, um, and just everything is coming together. That may be a place where somebody like Kirk Cousins wants to go to. And yes, he realizes he's what, 35 years old. He probably doesn't have but just maybe 3 or 4 years left in his career. So, what better place to go than a place that's willing to give him maybe a couple of seasons, that has a quarterback in waiting, that maybe Kirk Cousins can taste the Super Bowl appearance at least, and then after that, give way to a young quarterback who's going to be able to take them for years to come to the promised land. I think that really works well for Washington. That's something we should consider. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments about that. Now, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But again, it's opinion piece. I've stated the reason why I feel like that would work, and other people feel like it won't. But at the end of the day, I think all of us will agree that we just want our team to be winners again. If you're down with that, give me a hell to the Washington Commanders. I will see you in the next one.